back in the mid-90s, I think, and represented a time where library music was beginning to take off, but not so much that I was doing it all the time. So there was time to record some extra things. I'm just having a look at the tracks. It's interesting. Yes, it's a mixture really of some solo guitar pieces which I would have recorded on spec, really. Then the ones with Quique Berro Garcia, when he would have been over in '94, I think, and so that would have been a year or two later. And there's a couple of things that were possible sort of library, like Lost Withiel, which didn't think fitted into library, Under the Ice. So quite a varied mixture, because there's acoustic guitar, there's some electric guitar stuff on Sarah Blakely's Evening. Yes, so I think hopefully quite an interesting mixture, and of course this has all been remastered, so it should sound clearer, cleaner, and I think that this one fits into the category of the sort of potpourri PPs. I mean, there have been those that have been recorded specially, and those that have been single instrument feature. But this is more, I suppose, in the style that was started with 1, 2, 4, and then sort of, I suppose, 7. This would be a sort of successor to 7 in a sense. First meeting with Quique Berro Garcia was when I was doing sides in the late 70s with Rupert Hine producing, and Rupert's girlfriend Jeanette had met Quique. I'm not quite sure how, perhaps through his girlfriend, and this very modest man was introduced to me at the end of one of the mixing sessions, and we went into the I suppose what would have been the kind of drum booth, you know, could have the separate screened off area so he could play stuff, and I knew he was a guitarist, and he picked up a guitar and started playing collections from the Geese that Goes with the tune as well, and I was sort of, you know, eyes popping out of my head, because it reminded me of what I dimly remember as the magical versions of the Beatles songs that my very first guitar teacher used to play, where I'd give him the sheet music and he played the chords and the tune. And I remember thinking, this is you know, complete magic, really. And so I rather felt at the time, and I know I've been quoted on this before, but saying, you know, really I should be your fan. You shouldn't really be my fan. He's terribly humble, and he was studying over here, and so we then got together and did some stuff by ourselves. I had some guitar duets which we played. There was no talk about really doing an album or anything, but things just sort of fell into place. So in the summer of '81 we did write quite a lot more new material, and that, with the old guitar duets, turned out to be the album that came out as Private Parts and Pieces 3 Antiques. Then, of course, sadly he had to leave. Well, he didn't in fact have to leave the country because of the, he's an Argentine, because of the Falklands War, but they chose to go before that, but it was obviously hard getting back, and so our paths really didn't cross that much for a while. There were odd trips and we would do odd versions, but we never had a block of time to develop that relationship, which has been sad. Probably that represents '94, the last chunk of time we ever had to really work on anything. And it was done in a very informal way. I mean, he was here for 2 or 3 weeks, so we would just go in the studio and generally just improvise, really. and that was where quite a few tracks come. And in fact, Atmosphere commissioned us, or did they commission us, or did we do it on spec? I can't remember. A couple of Spanish sounding tracks. So yes, sadly that was the last chance we had to do anything together properly. Withiel was going to be the title of the Geese and the Ghost. That was one of the working titles of the Geese and the Ghost, but luckily it got voted out. It had rather a wonderful image to it, somehow, the name, although I gather the town itself, no disrespect to the safe burgers of Lostwithiel, isn't quite as magical and mysterious and misty as it sounds like. It's more prosaic. I think it was, as I recall the piece, it really grew out of the sort of sine tone ostinato, which was produced by a sampler called the Dynacord. That's right, it was its sine tone, and which is quite hip now. That sort of sound is very much still in vogue now, so it was sort of ahead of its time. But I was going down a furrow that was, I think, a little bit different. I'm not claiming it was massively original, but it wasn't, again, really influenced by anything, I don't think. It had quite a snowy, cold sort of feeling, but a little bit fairy tale, and I can see why people have wanted to use it in visual music, because it is rather evocative.